you everybody for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. Matchup, Seattle, Washington, Oregon, and Washington. In my opinion, coming in, they were the two best teams in the Pac-12, and they delivered. What was great about this game, before we get to the nuance of everything, you know, sometimes we get these big games and they just don't live up to the hype, right? Sometimes we get these big games and one team doesn't deliver, one team's overrated. Sometimes we get games like Texas A&M, Tennessee, where neither team is good, but somebody's got to win. That was not the case in Seattle, Washington, as this was back and forth. And I thought both of these programs asserted themselves well. I think even with the loss, Oregon, to me, looks like a playoff type team. Washington, to me, has the inside track to a Pac-12 championship game appearance. And we'll discuss, because I think there's a good chance this was not the first time that we see these teams play this year. With that said, let's get to what was ultimately the play. I don't want to say it's the play that decided the game, but it's certainly the play that everybody is talking about coming out of this game. And it was a decision by Oregon coach Dan Lanning late in the fourth quarter to go for it on fourth down. A little bit of context. And again, listen, if you want to play by play, minute by minute, moment by moment, there are other places you can go to. But this game, I don't want to say it came down to this play, but this was the defining play of the game. So for people who were not in front of a TV, just a quick 30-second context. But again, back and forth game. Awesome. Late in the game, Oregon has the ball with under 2 minutes to go. Washington is out of timeouts, but Washington gets the stop. Oregon has a fourth down on the Washington 47, and Oregon has a decision to make with under 2 minutes to go. Do we punt the ball back to Washington with about a minute 47 left? I think it was a minute 30 somewhere in there. And do we make them go the length of the field, or do we go for it on fourth down right now? If they go for it on fourth down, Washington is out of timeouts. Oregon can kneel, win the game, and steal a top 10 victory in Seattle. Well, Dan Lanning decides to go for it, and Oregon doesn't get it. And unfortunately for Dan Lanning, it blew up in his face, because 2 plays, 53 yards later, Washington goes the length of the field, scores a touchdown to go up 36-33. They obviously kicked the extra point. And then Oregon does get the ball back with over a minute to go. They get themselves in field goal range. But unfortunately, as you've all seen on highlights by now, if you were not watching live, Oregon misses what would have been the game-tying field goal to go to overtime. And so after the game, I watched Dan Lanning's press conference. It was the first question he was asked. And to Dan Lanning's credit, he said, "I'm the reason we lost. Blame me, whatever." It is worth noting, by the way, that Oregon also went for it on fourth down in the red zone at the end of the first half rather than kicking a field goal. And I know it's easy to say, well, if they kick the field goal, we end up with a tie game and you're kicking to win the game. But ultimately, I think the conversation that most people are having is, did Dan Lanning make the right decision? Did Dan Lanning make the right decision going for it on fourth down, or did he cost his team a win by not punting? Old school kind of thought process is punt, make the other team go the length of the field. Kind of the new school analytics say go for it on fourth down. And it's the question that everybody's asking. Did Dan Lanning make the right decision to go for it? Let me say this. You guys and girls know I'm not an analytics guy. You know that I think some of this new age stuff is overtaken common sense, and I don't love it. But what I am here to tell you definitively right now, this second, is this. Dan Lanning absolutely, positively, 1,000% certainly made the right decision in that moment to go for it on fourth down. Just because it didn't work out, just because they didn't get the first down, and just because they lost the game doesn't make it the wrong decision. In life, you can make the wrong decision and not get the results that you want. And Dan Lanning absolutely, in my opinion, made the right decision. And let me explain why, because I was thinking about this afterward. I talked about it a little bit on my Saturday college football show on Fox Sports Radio. When you think about the circumstances, and again, give me 30 seconds to reset it. You are on the road, okay? You're playing a top 10 team, and you're up by 4 with under 2 minutes to go. Washington has no timeouts. So if you get that first down, the game is over. If you punt it, you're punting it back to a team with a Heisman Trophy caliber quarterback that essentially you have not been able to stop all night. I would argue nobody's been able to stop in the last 2 years. And so part of it is nuance. Part of it is context. You're not playing Army that can't throw the football. You're not playing a team that struggles to pass the ball. You're playing literally the best quarterback maybe in college football in this particular season. So there's that context. But to me, and I think this was part of Dan Lanning's process, okay, and part of his thought process. In my opinion, Oregon choosing to go for it on 4th down, okay? In essence, there are 4 things that can happen when you choose to go for it on 4th down, and 3 of them are actually in your favor. Here are the 4 things that can happen. 1, you can convert the 4th down, game over, you win. 2, you can not convert the 4th down, Washington gets the football back, they don't score, you win. Now keep in mind, again, Washington had to go the length of the field and score a touchdown. Field goal doesn't win it. Field goal doesn't tie it. You have to score a touchdown. So Washington would have to go the length. Even if you don't get it, they have to score a touchdown. So 1, you get it, game's over. 2, you give it to them, they don't get it, game's over. 3, you give it to them, but they score with enough time left on the clock where you can potentially go back and either tie it or win it. And then, of course, the 4th scenario is the death scenario, the worst scenario possible, where they get the ball back and they score and you don't have enough time to realistically get a shot at the end zone. And so I bring it up because all of those variables are in play. I also think it's worth noting, by going for it, you're sort of inherently saying your defense, you don't know if your defense can stop this explosive offense, to which I would say, if that's the case, then in theory, it's sort of baked in that you could get the ball, that if you don't get it, they could score and you could get the ball back with enough time. And so I think Dan Lanning in that moment thought about all those different scenarios. And he said, even if they score, I think with this offense, we'll have enough time to at least get in field goal range. So you have 4 scenarios. 3 of them are sort of in your favor, and it worked out in your favor, even though you gave up a touchdown. You got the ball back. You got enough time. You got in field goal range, and the kick didn't go through. As I said, you can make the right decision and get the result that you don't want. That is part of life. But I don't blame Dan Lanning at all. And so with that, let's talk bigger picture about these 2 programs, because this was an incredible game. And kind of what I said after the Red River shootout last week, I think, and I hope we see these 2 teams again in the Pac-12 championship game. Now it's going to be a little bit different. The Pac-12 is deeper and tougher than the Big 12. But first of all, let's look at these 2 teams, and let's start with Washington. 1, listen, I owe Washington like a huge apology. Like, if you don't think Washington is going to be in where Aaron was wrong on Friday, you're out of your mind. Because this team, to me, I thought it was Michael Penix pass, this, that, the other thing. Michael Penix is unbelievable, okay? But let's give credit to those receivers. Roma Desney, Jalen Polk, both went over 100 yards. But the offensive line against the best pass rush they've seen held up. And that defense is probably better than I gave them credit for as well. And so when I look at Washington, I sit there and say, that's not a perfect team. But there's no perfect teams in college football this year. Do I think they can run the table? Do I think they can win the Pac-12? Do I think they can get to the playoff? Do I think they can win playoff games? I absolutely do. Now, from the Oregon perspective, it's a little bit more challenging. Kind of like Texas, their margin for error is gone. But how can you watch that game from the Oregon perspective and not say they can run the table, they can still win the Pac-12? You understand that they had over 100 more yards of total offense on the road against Washington. You understand that they had the ball with under 2 minutes to go and a chance to win in the most hostile road environment that they'll play in all year, as hostile as anyone will play in college football all season. They had a chance to go the length of the field and win that game. And so I'm sorry, but I'm not going to sit here and throw a funeral for Oregon because they couldn't get the 3 yards. And then, oh, by the way, because they missed a field goal that would have tied the game to force overtime. And so you look at Oregon, again, the schedule is not easy. Like Washington, they still have 4 teams on the schedule that were ranked in the top 25 this past week, starting with Washington State at home this week. From there, they have at USC, they have Utah at Utah, they have USC at home, They have at Utah, which is a place they lost 2 years ago with a chance to go to the college football playoff. And also they have Oregon State at home to end the year. So that is not an easy schedule. but Oregon can absolutely run the table. And if they get back to the Pac-12 championship game, I'm just going to say it right now. If both these teams are healthy, I think Oregon's probably the favorite in that game to win that game and potentially go to the playoff. And so I know there's no moral victories for Oregon in this scenario, but at the same time, we have to call a spade a spade. It was an incredible game. Somebody had to lose. But do I think that both these teams could end up in Vegas for the Pac-12 championship game? I do. And do I believe that both these teams can make the college football playoff and win games there? I do. By the way, I didn't mention it. I think it goes without saying. Michael Penix, man, I owe you an apology, my guy. This is a guy that's been through so much, a guy that so many injuries. They talked about on the broadcast, 2 shoulder injuries, 2 knee injuries, didn't work out at Indiana, revives his career at Washington. That is your Heisman Trophy favorite. We'll see how the whole thing plays out. But you look at the rest of college football. Caleb Williams ain't winning that thing again. Shedeur Sanders ain't winning that thing. Jaden Daniels at LSU is incredible. He ain't winning that thing. So, maybe a Dylan Gabriel, maybe somebody else. Michael Penix is your favorite. Congrats to the Washington Huskies on an incredible win. You deserved it, and I was dead wrong on you.